obsolete technology, old tape decks, and analog tape loops. You can take a piece of that tape and cut it, and then you can tape it together, and then you have a loop. A kind of eternal perfection happens, and you can't tell the beginning or the end. And it just seems to create a timeless sort of amniotic bubble that you can float in. When that happens, then I'm, okay, this is a good one. I'm onto something here. So this is what I sort of look for.
I find it funny how easily we forget the importance of art. No matter where our stories begin in the world, we all end that story in the same place. The cycle of life and death is inevitable, and nobody can live forever. Art, however, has the amazing ability to outlast our lives, speaking through infinity to inspire and educate. And I feel there is no greater art form than music. Without any visuals required, music can transfer our complex minds to entirely new planes of emotion and teach us things about the world without a single word spoken. It's so powerful, it can even take us through time itself, bringing us back to our most precious memories or our future desires. In a world filled with beginnings and endings, starting gun and finish line, assignment and deadline, life and death, art persists and lasts far longer than any of us realize. I was born in 2003, and from a young age, I was exposed to various genres of music. Growing up near Seattle, the sound of distorted and fuzzed out guitars, along with Kurt Cobain's iconic vocals, filled my ears everywhere I went. Bands like Breaking Benjamin and The Used would regularly blast through my stepfather's radio as we drove through heavy Washington rain. My mother would later expose me to 90s rap and hip-hop, a genre I was much too young to be listening to at the time. Even the video games I played back then were loaded with banger soundtracks that bring me back to those beautiful days anytime I hear them.
You know what it takes to make a great record, and so does Laura Branigan.
As I grew physically, my mind and my tastes began to expand as well, and I soon found myself wrapped up in the heavier side of music. Unexpectedly to me, my middle school years were soon defined by the Bay Area thrash metal of the 80s. Along with more nu metal stuff like Slipknot. More recently, though, I have had the pleasure of working with many other musicians who have exposed me to phenomenal music that I never would have even considered. One of these being the genre of electronic music, which I discounted for a long time. Whenever I wanted music that was more mellowed out and atmospheric, I would find myself diving back into those video game soundtracks from my childhood, wondering where I could get more of this style outside of OSTs. Enter the genre of ambient, which, to my surprise, started way before my generation, dating all the way back to the 1970s with the release of Brian Eno's Ambient 1 Music for Airports. The genre would later become much more relevant in the 90s, however, with artists like Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada, two of my personal favorites, becoming pioneers of creating deeply immersive soundscapes that evoke emotions from the deepest parts of the human mind, all with little to no words spoken at all. It's an interesting genre, to say the least, and there are many phenomenal albums that have come out of the ambient music scene. If you were to search up a list of the best ambient albums, you would be greeted to some popular essentials. The previously mentioned Ambient 1 Music for Airports by Brian Eno in 1974, An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, The Caretaker, 2011. Replica, One O Tricks Point Never, also in 2011. Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, Aphex Twin in 1994. Music Has the Right to Children, Boards of Canada, 1998. But there is one album you might see near the top of these lists that I haven't seen many talk about. An album that is so rich in its sound and history that it has now been cemented as one of the darkest and most beautiful pieces of ambient music ever created.
Sometimes we all need to take a chill pill, you know, and I think it's very healthy to get out of it for a moment, you know, turn off the email, turn off the cell phone, turn off everything, and just breathe.
This is William Basinski, an experimental music composer known for employing obsolete technology to create ambient and mysterious soundscapes. In his childhood, he played the clarinet, being classically trained from an early age, and even studied jazz saxophone. He would eventually discover the music of Brian Eno, becoming fascinated by the minimalist nature of his music, and began to experiment with using tape loops and reel-to-reel decks to create his own ambient music. Basinski's music often feels melancholic, sounding like a fading memory in the back of our minds. A running theme in ambient music is that many artists seek to capture this feeling of nostalgia, and some actually have been quite successful. One of the most popular being The Caretaker, specifically the album Everywhere at the End of Time. But returning to Basinski, the process of how he captured his recordings is slightly unique. As mentioned before, Basinski favored using analog tape loops to create his music. For those who are unfamiliar, a tape loop is simply a loop of magnetic tape that records sound and plays it back continuously as it cycles through a tape machine. As an example, let's say you sing into a microphone. As you sing, your voice vibrates a thin piece of material inside the mic called a diaphragm. This then moves a small coil of wire between two magnets. That movement creates an electrical signal. When that signal is recorded onto magnetic tape, it rearranges tiny magnetic particles on the surface of the tape, forming a pattern that matches the shape of the original sound wave. You play that tape back, and you'll hear the original sound that you recorded. Where it becomes interesting is when we start to look at what time does to these tapes. Before the album we are discussing today, Basinski had released 2 albums under his own label, Shortwave Music in 1998 and Water Music in the year of 2001. Both were experimental and gained only modest attention at the time, but his next project would change everything. Throughout the years, Basinski had saved many of his old tape loops, some more than 20 years old at this point, and after the release of Water Music, he began to immediately work on a new project. While living in his apartment in Brooklyn, New York, he began converting these old tape loops to a digital format. He started the process and reportedly got up to make a pot of coffee, leaving the tapes to do their thing. However, due to their age, the magnetic tape's binder holding the tapes together began to deteriorate. With every pass through the machine, flecks of the audio literally fell off the tape. The recordings were slowly disintegrating, and the loops began to collapse into fragmented, ghostly echoes. To quote Basinski, "To my shock and surprise, I soon realized that the tape loop itself was disintegrating. As it played round and round, the iron oxide particles were gradually turning to dust and dropping into the tape machine, leaving bare plastic spots on the tape and silence in these corresponding sections of the new recording." I had heard about this happening, and frankly was very afraid of this happening to me, since so much of my early work was precariously near the end of its shelf life. Still, I had never actually seen it happen, yet here it was, happening. The music was dying. I was recording the death of this sweeping melody. It was very emotional for me, and mystical as well. When the disintegration was complete, the body was simply a little strip of clear plastic with a few clinging cords. The music had turned to dust and was scattered along the tape path in little piles and clumps. Yet the essence and memory of the life and death of this music had been saved, recorded to a new media, remembered. Instead of stopping the process, Basinski let the tapes continue to fall apart, recording the gradual decay in real time. One could say, time had become an instrument, and Basinski had created something that was truly unique. I can only imagine Basinski's feelings at this discovery, as he continued to do this with his remaining loops, which would later culminate into a 5-hour run of ambient decay. However, unknown to him at the time, his creation would gain more meaning and more impact than anyone could have predicted just a few weeks later.
Might as well. Good morning.
Well,
Good
how are
morning.
you?
Good
How
morning.
are you? Thanks for joining us on the Monday morning show. And most of you sitting through the city with 1.25 inches of rain.
Inch and a quarter?
1.25 inches. That was the rainfall total for the
Wow.
park. Walk over to the wall. We'll show you what it looks like. This shot showing you lower Manhattan. And everything is actually in pretty good shape now.
Basinski had finished digitizing the decaying loops in the late summer of 2001. Weeks later, he awoke on a clear and sunny day to an eviction notice nailed to his door. And something much worse.
Smoke and screaming
But
and
on ABC7
screaming
Eyewitness
engines and
News,
all the
special
fire
report.
The date was September 11th, 2001, a day that would become one of the darkest in modern memory. At 8:46 a.m., New York civilians watched in shock as a Boeing 767 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And 17 minutes later, the world watched in terror as a second plane hit the South Tower. America was under attack.
As you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness,
Oh, God.
there's another one.
Oh,
Oh my goodness, there's another
this
one.
seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a second plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. I think we have a terrorist act of proportions that we cannot begin to imagine at this juncture.
At 9:59 a.m., 56 minutes after it was struck, the South Tower collapsed in a plume of ash and steel. Less than 30 minutes later, the North Tower followed. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, and the world was forever changed. Basinski witnessed it all from the rooftop of his Brooklyn apartment.
We saw the top of the South Tower crack off and fall from my building, and then we ran upstairs. So we turned on the disintegration loops really loud. Just went up on the roof and sat there looking at this new landscape.
With a group of friends, he stood in stunned silence as the skyline disappeared. That evening, as the smoke drifted across the river, he brought a stereo to the roof and played the loops he had finished only weeks earlier. In that moment, the eerie, experimental tapes took on a new weight. They didn't just represent the passage of time. They mirrored the unraveling of a collective reality. As the New York skyline crumbled into dust, the loops echoed their descent. Basinski later borrowed a camera and set it up on the rooftop of his apartment. recording the setting sun on a smoke-filled horizon. He eventually synchronized this footage with the loops themselves. The result is a haunting combination of image and sound, a meditation on grief, impermanence, and the fragility of human life. Subsequently, over the next few years, Basinski would release these recordings as a compilation of 4 albums titled The Disintegration Loops, each album cover using a still from the video footage he took of that day. Local indie record shops, such as the now permanently closed Other Music, sold hundreds of copies upon release. And a decade later, the loops would be re-released as a 9 LP box set containing a 5 CD version of the loops, a 6-minute DVD, and a 144-page book that contained photos and liner notes from Basinski himself. This reissue complemented the project's induction into the National September 11th Memorial Museum in New York City. Now over 2 decades later, the Disintegration Loops stand as one of the most highly regarded ambient music projects of all time, with Pitchfork giving the original release a 9.4 out of 10 and the reissue a perfect 10 out of 10. On September 11, 2011, the loops were performed live at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York by an orchestra, marking the 10-year anniversary of the terrorist attacks. As mentioned before, I was born in 2003. 9/11 to me was a subject taught in school, a chapter in a textbook. And while I've done my best to educate myself on the topic, the truth is I will never fully understand what it felt like to live through that day. The fear, the confusion, the immense loss. What these people went through, what some of you watching might have experienced, is something I can only imagine. But the loops get me slightly closer to understanding what that day felt like. What amazes me most about this story is how easily it could have never happened. Basinski could have seen the tapes disintegrating and stopped them from converting. He could, by all accounts, have just thrown them away. But he didn't do that. One of the most impactful ambient works ever made came about by a technical failure, a mistake that coincided with a tragedy that also, in every way, should have never occurred. More than a sonic experiment or a historical coincidence, the loops have come to embody something eternal. The beauty in decay, the persistence of memory, and the quiet dignity of mourning. It's a composition that doesn't demand attention but rewards deep listening. Each loop, slowly unraveling, speaks to the impermanence of all things. A meditation on loss not as a moment, but rather as a slow process. When you lose someone or something you care about, they aren't gone in an instant. While physically they might not be with you anymore, their presence resides in the back of your mind for years, as your memories of them slowly fade into blurs. You forget their voice, their touch, but you never forget their love. That part, that stays forever. That Basinski captured this feeling through sound so honestly and unintentionally will never cease to floor me. Whether through echoing concert halls, art museums, or a pair of headphones in the quiet of night, these loops endure. Not just as music, but as a shared human experience of remembering, grieving, and enduring. everybody. I just wanted to put this segment in here to give you all a thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this video. I really appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to watch these videos, especially one as heavy and as emotionally loaded as this one is. And if this video interested you at all, I would encourage you to go listen to the Disintegration Loops, read about its history, and experience it in your own way. It's a piece of art that clearly inspired me to make this video, and I just want it to gain the attention that I think it deserves, as well as all the other albums I mentioned in this video. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and for supporting the channel, for leaving your comments, and for just being here, man. It truly means the world to me, and I have some more cool stuff on the way. Don't worry, the next one will be an analog horror video. It's not all gonna be doom and gloom. But yeah, I'll get to that as soon as I can. Just take care of yourselves, guys. Take care of each other, as always. God bless you all, and have a great day. Bye-bye.